So, Elizabeth Warren's lies about her quote unquote Native American heritage and belonging to the Cherokee Nation might have been a more egregious, offensive, and harmful lie than we originally thought. Thanks for tuning into this live stream segment of Mikasa Sukasa. So, Elizabeth Warren got baited into getting a quote unquote blood test or a DNA test by Donald Trump to prove that she is Native American. Pretty sure everybody knows how that story ended. Didn't really end well for Elizabeth Warren. Not only was she not Native American, according to that DNA test, she was what, 1 in 2028, some crazy number. Let me just put it like this. I know Scandinavians who have more African blood than Elizabeth Warren had Native American blood. Now, I don't think people would be as offended by what she did or what she claimed to be if she just had this wonderful history of advocating for Native American Indigenous issues, but she hasn't. And it's interesting to me that she has had she's bragged about her Native American heritage. She talks about all the stories her grandparents used to tell her about her Native American heritage, quote unquote. I mean, when she was running for president, right before she started running for president, that's when she started talking about it all the time. And obviously, when she was looking to get into school or get a job or whatever, that's when her Native American heritage was important to her. Now, there's a reason why Liz doesn't tell the entire story. But before we get into that, I wanted to show you this clip really quick of this Indigenous woman on Lee Camp's show who lays out perfectly what was wrong with everything Elizabeth Warren did in regards to claiming her Indigenous, quote unquote, heritage. Let's check this out.
Slaughtered long before that removal even happened. So we already have all of this trauma on top of us. Then we lose our land in the southeast. We get moved to present-day Oklahoma, then referred to as Indian Territory. And not even 100 years later, Oklahoma State had occurred, and they did the land run where non-Native people, mostly white people from all over the world, not even just America, came, lined up at a starting point, a pistol fired, and they went off and literally stuck a stake in the ground and said, "This is mine."
Right, literally the American government just said, if you get out there at this particular time, you can just have the land.
Right, so this is the second time we've had our land taken from us. And Warren's family is a part of this history. So not only is she not Cherokee, but her family has taken an active role in our genocide. Rebecca Nagel, who's also a citizen of Cherokee Nation, just came out with an article talking about Warren's family and how they came, one of her family members went to Tennessee and took part in murdering us. And then they went to Oklahoma and took our land there. So for me, as someone whose family and ancestors have suffered this genocide, I'm watching how my people are still suffering to this day. We have the highest rates of sexual assault, kidnapping, trafficking, murder by police, the worst health care. I mean, these issues go on. And to see someone like Warren, who has no claims to us, no ties to us, is not one of us, turn around and use our identity as a way to further her education and career, well, that's just a slap in the face to every Indigenous.
Yeah, I know that's heavy. That's hard to get through, I know. Now, what was she referring to when she said, well, it's extremely hurtful when you see somebody using your Native American heritage, your plight, your struggle to basically profit personally in whatever way, whether it be financially, whether it be acquiring a job, whether it be getting into a school, Ivy League school. It does hurt. And here's what she meant by that. So you can see, Oh, give me a sec. Let me pull it up. There you go. You can see here, this is a registration card for the bar, the state bar for Texas. It says Elizabeth Warren. You know, they have her information up there. And right at the bottom, you see that? It says, what is your race? Which, by the way, American Indian is not a race. Would technically be an ethnicity, but it says American Indian. Now, some people would say, well, why would you do that if you're registering for a bar? And there's plenty of reasons why you would say that. Remember, Elizabeth Warren did grow up in a time where businesses had to, you know, even if they didn't want diversity, they at least had to feign the desire to want diversity. In other words, you had a racial quota, you know, a gender quota, and in law firms and in corporate America, like if you were a woman of color, especially a black woman, and I would imagine an indigenous woman as well, because there are not a lot of indigenous people in general in the legal field, let alone a lot of indigenous women. So that is damn near like if you've had the privilege to grow up in a household that cultivated, you know, the quote unquote definition of American definition of professionalism, and you can speak that language. And for those of you who've ever taken the LSAT or taken the bar exam or have taken really any major professional or any major standardized test to get into a professional school, you know what I'm talking about. Like, it's not a language you traditionally speak in a, you know, house with a culture that may have been marginalized by the Western world. So when you add that to the plight attached to being an American Indian, you can get into damn near anything you would like, and you could do whatever you want. There's literally no limitations on you at that point, because whatever shortcoming you might have had that would have kept somebody else from getting into that school, from getting that job, you are now stacking all of your I don't know how to put this, but your imperialistic experience, right? Because that's basically your colonialist experience. In other words, you were benefited from the dominant colonial culture that is the United States hegemon. Okay, you know what I'm talking about. Don't play stupid, y'all. You've benefited from that experience, and then you get to use the plight of the experiences of the Native Americans, which you've never experienced, to your advantage. Keep it, mind you, the Native Americans very rarely get to use it to their advantage. That's what makes it so bad. So it's very opportunistic of Elizabeth Warren to use it. And this is, once again, this is proof that she wasn't just casually saying this. She was literally saying this and using it to her advantage. Now, here's what makes this even more disgusting. I don't know if you all recall in the video, the reporter referred to an article written by, give me a second, Rebecca Nigel. She is also a member of the Cherokee Nation. Of course, that's the same nation in which Elizabeth Warren said she's from. Rebecca Nigel wrote a brilliant piece with some investigative journalism, and whoo, look, it's already bad enough that Elizabeth Warren's claiming to be Native American for her own personal agenda. But when I read to you, what I'm about to read to you, it's probably going to get your blood boiling a little bit. I'm not going to lie to you. But let's take a little peep into what this article says. So look at an excerpt. In 1836, Warren's great-great-great-grandfather, a white man named William Marsh, enlisted himself in a Tennessee militia specifically to fight the Cherokee War, an occupation of Cherokee land and the lead up to the Trail of Tears. Decades later, his grandson, John Houston Crawford, moved his family onto Indian territory and squatted on Cherokee land, in a move that, with no record of a permit, was almost certainly illegal. The Crawfords were just some of the tens of thousands of white squatters who outnumbered Cherokees on our own land. While Cherokee Nation besieged Congress to enforce our treaty rights and kick them out, the squatters pushed Congress to divide up our treaty territory and create a path to white land ownership, and the squatters won. The Crawfords, still referring to Elizabeth Warren's family, settled in the new state of Oklahoma. They lived among Indians, and it wasn't always peaceful. In 1906, John Crawford, once again, this is, I want to say Elizabeth Warren's great grandfather, because this is the it's her great grandfather. So John Crawford in 1906 shot a man in a creek for hitting his son. According to the Boston Globe, his son Roscoe would later tell the story about how mean Indians were. But one of Crawford's grandchildren, Pauline Reed, told a very different story. Not the story of living among Indians, but the story of being an Indian. Pauline's youngest child, Elizabeth, grew up with her mother's version of the story. And though the family had no evidence or relationship to the tribe, Elizabeth Warren never questioned it. She wrote in her memoir, it was a family story. The story of Warren's family traces the history of Cherokee Nation, but we sit on opposite sides of that story. Like many other white families, Warren's ancestors replaced the truth of their complicity in Cherokee dispossession with the tales of being Cherokee. If that's not wrong, if that's not racist, I don't know what is. Wow. That's wow. So not only did you lie, basically, and like I said, I could have forgiven her for just being ignorant. Like, sometimes your family could lie to you. Like, her mother did lie to her. But like, you didn't just lie. You quite literally are a beneficiary of Cherokee and Indigenous genocide. And what makes it worse is that, like, and you didn't see this part of the video, but the young lady in the video said that those DNA tests on top of, like, they could say, they basically are, they can't actually tell if you're Native American. The DNA test. It's kind of like when it comes to your African heritage. They can't actually tell what part of Africa you're actually from, what tribe you belong to, and things like that. Because there are different sovereign nations within specific areas of, the original territories of the Native Americans. So like, they could just say, oh, look, this is how far your family has gone back in this particular area. And so because y'all lived here at the same time as this Cherokee community lived next door, we're just going to assume that you were Cherokee. And I love what this author said towards the end of the statement that I read to you, which is that, like a lot of other white people, a lot of other colonizers from that time period, they didn't tell the real story. They made it seem like they were one of the Cherokees, like they were original. And once again, this is just emblematic of, this is how colonizers always tell the story. We were one. Like what we learned about Thanksgiving in elementary school, the white people and the indigenous people, they loved each other. The colonizers were never racist towards them. Come on, bruh. Come on. Because, I mean, think about it. How could you look your daughter in the face and tell her your grandfather literally enlisted to murder Native Americans? That's how we got this. We came in here during the Oklahoma, that run, where they just literally went and grabbed land. We came here, stole somebody's land, and you're Cherokee now. Isn't that crazy? That's amazing. You think that you might feel a little bit of shame for what your family has done, and instead of and by the way, that could have been a moment to educate Elizabeth Warren. on the part of her mom. That could have been a moment to educate her. And instead, she tells her a lie to try and make what she did not seem as bad. It's like so in the South, one of the ways slavery is taught is that some black people loved being slaves because they got housing, they got 3 square meals a day, they had a job, they felt fulfilled. And you know, the Civil War had nothing to do with slavery. That's what a lot of people were told in the South. Like, this is an ongoing theme. But what makes it bad is that not only did your grandparents participate in the genocide of Indigenous, but and that was in the 1800s, but you are participating in the genocide of Indigenous now by being part of a government and actively saying, no different than your grandfather, I guess it runs in your blood, we got to let those workers work. Remember no DAPL, North Dakota Access Pipeline? Gotta let those workers work. I know an Indigenous woman had her arm shot off. Or was that the one? No, excuse me. Indigenous woman had her eye shot off. A young college student had her arm shot off. But we gotta let those workers work. I know we're violating treaties and laws. Gotta let them workers work. And the woman in the video, the Lee Camp video, also goes on to say, she says, I actually covered Elizabeth Warren. I had an interview with her. And she asked her about her Cherokee heritage and about that story. You know what Elizabeth Warren told her? I know my family's history. That's what she said. I know who my family is. Your family is kind of murderers, I'm just saying. If you won't take care of the people that you supposedly, you at least thought you did. You thought you had a blood relationship to the Cherokee people specifically and Indigenous people all around. And you didn't take care of them. You couldn't speak up for them. In fact, you've had such a quote unquote an illustrious career in the eyes of many politicians. And a lot of that is because of the access that you were granted because of your quote unquote Indigenous heritage. And you still couldn't speak up and pay homage and defend the Indigenous community when it needed you the most. And I'm supposed to expect you as president to take care of me, a no-name voter, somebody you have no personal relationship or connection to? When you look an Indigenous Cherokee woman in your face after getting caught lying and say, I know who my family is? What the hell? You can't even just say, I'm sorry. Well, she eventually did after she got bullied into it by the nation, and by the country. But like, you should be owning that every single chance you get. You should be speaking up for Indigenous rights even more, considering how much you've personally profited off of their plight. And this is who's supposed to be a progressive. This is who a lot of the country thinks should be president. This is who I like to call the champion of white women. Warren, the white woman champion. And it's funny that I just told you a story about her great-great-great-grandfather literally actively committed genocide. Grandfather killed an Indigenous man just for hitting his son. And God knows, we don't even really know that story. And to those who bolster Warren, will hear all the stories, not only just about her old family, but about Elizabeth Warren and how she treated the Indigenous people. And you know what they'll tell you? They'll look at you, it's not a big deal. Because it's not a big deal to the people who boost Warren. Why would it be? When do those people actively campaign in one form or another for marginalized people outside of paying lip service every now and then? They promote the very people who participate in genocidal behavior, in neo-colonial behavior. The prison industrial complex when it came to Hillary Clinton. The suffering of indigenous people when it comes to Elizabeth Warren. The suffering of black people when it came to Barack Obama and him bolstering the military industrial complex and the prison industrial complex. They'll tell you we have to settle for these types instead of asking why the hell are they our only options? Instead of taking the challenge on admitting that we have a systemic problem and talking about solutions from that perspective instead of us settling for those complicit in colonial genocide, whether it be in the 1800s or in 2019. It says a lot about the person you are. You're okay with this type of behavior. It means you're okay with flawed, sociopathic, psychopathic to a degree if you're Hillary, but at least in Warren's case, her behavior is sociopathic. For you to use that indigenous plight to your advantage in the ways that she's done is unforgivable. Yeah, you can vote with progressives every now and then, but at the end of the day, you threw your own quote unquote, not really hers, but let's just say they were hers. She threw her own people under the bus. As a senator, so you think she won't throw this country under the bus as a president? Come on. Thank you so much for tuning into this live stream segment of Mi Casa es Su Casa. And hey, always remember, more than anything else, people, find your balance. Peace. Hey, hit the subscribe button if you like that segment of Mi Casa es Su Casa. Also, you can help us upgrade the studio and take the show on the road to cover the on-the-ground politics that you love by clicking on that GoFundMe link in the description and donating literally anything. Anything helps. You can follow us on Rockin', on Twitter, and Facebook as well. And hey, more than anything else, always remember, find your balance.